When Rosa Elena Martinez accidentally delivers her secret love letter to the wrong house, she expects heartbreak. What she finds instead is a reclusive novelist whose reply changes both of their lives forever. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun brightened the small Northern California town as Rosa Elena Martinez hurried down her front steps. At 27, she still lived in the same modest house where she'd grown up, now sharing it with her widowed mother. The crisp autumn air made her pull her cardigan tighter around her shoulders as she clutched an envelope in her hand. "Rosa, don't forget your lunch," called her mother from the doorway. Rosa stopped and turned around with a smile. "Thanks, Mama." She took the paper bag and quickly kissed her mother's cheek. "You're in a hurry today," her mother noticed, eyeing the envelope in Rosa's hand. "Just some notes for Mr. Parker," Rosa lied, feeling her cheeks warm slightly. "Library." "Business." Her mother nodded, though her eyes held a knowing look. "Have a good day, mihija." Rosa hurried down the street, her heart pounding. The envelope she carried wasn't library business at all. After years of silent pining, she had finally written down her feelings for Daniel Parker, her neighbor and longtime crush. He was moving away next week for a job in Seattle, and she couldn't let him go without knowing how she felt. The letter had taken her all night to write. Every word was carefully chosen, every emotion carefully measured. She'd sealed it with a small daisy sticker. Daniel once mentioned they were his favorite flowers. "You don't know this, but I've loved you in every small way. From the way you water your plants to the way you always smile at my mother when she waves. This isn't a confession, just a goodbye to the heart I never gave." Those words had been the hardest to write. They made her feelings real. As Rosa approached Daniel's house, she saw Mrs. Finley from across the street, waving enthusiastically. "Rosa Elena, good morning. Do you have a minute?" Rosa waved back, momentarily distracted. Mrs. Finley was one of the library's most loyal patrons, always bringing homemade cookies for the staff. "I was wondering if that book I requested came in yet," Mrs. Finley called. "Not yet," Rosa answered, still walking. "Should be in by Thursday." In her distraction, Rosa didn't notice that she had walked past Daniel's house. When she stopped at a door to slip the envelope underneath, she was actually 3 houses down from where she intended to be. The mistake wouldn't have mattered much in any other neighborhood. But in this case, Rosa had just delivered her heart's confession to the wrong house, the mysterious home of Cassian Wolfe. Inside the large, silent house, Cassian Wolfe sat at his desk, staring at a blank computer screen. At 31, he was already a millionaire several times over, with 5 best-selling novels to his name. But he hadn't written a word in 3 years, not since the accident. His phone buzzed with another message from his publisher. He ignored it, just like he'd ignored the last 20. They wanted another book, the public wanted another book. But the words that had once flowed so easily now felt trapped behind a wall of grief. Cassian stood and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street. He'd chosen this small town precisely because nobody here cared about Cassian Wolfe, the author. They mostly just thought of him as the recluse at the end of the block, if they thought of him at all. He was about to turn away when he noticed a young woman hurrying down the street. There was something about her that caught his attention, perhaps the determined look on her face, or the way she clutched an envelope like it contained something precious. He watched as she stopped, distracted by someone calling to her from across the street. Then she approached his house and, to his surprise, bent down and slipped the envelope under his door. Cassian frowned. He rarely received mail here. His agent handled everything through his P.O. box in the city. He walked to the door and picked up the plain white envelope. No name, no address, just a small daisy sticker sealing it shut. Curiosity got the better of him. He opened it and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. As he read the handwritten words, something shifted inside him. The carefully formed letters spoke of a love observed in small moments, a love that had never been spoken aloud. It was raw, honest, and achingly familiar. It reminded him of how he used to feel before the numbness set in, but it clearly wasn't meant for him. The writer mentioned things, watering plants, waving to her mother, that he had never done. This letter was intended for someone else. Cassian read it again. and again. For the first time in 3 years, he felt something stir within him. A spark of connection to these words from a stranger who loved deeply but silently, just as he once had. Without thinking, he sat at his desk and pulled out a sheet of paper. His hand hovered over it for a moment, then began to move. "You didn't mean for me to read this, but I did. And if this is what it sounds like to love in silence, I'd like to hear more." He signed it simply, CW, and slipped it into an envelope. Rosa spent the day at the school library in a fog. She kept thinking about the letter, wondering if Daniel had found it yet. What would he think? Would he laugh? Or worse, would he feel sorry for her? "Ms. Martinez, can you help me find a book about dinosaurs?" asked a small voice, pulling her from her thoughts. Rosa smiled at the third grader. "Of course, Tommy. Let's see what we can find." This was why she loved her job as the school librarian. Books were safe. Books made sense, unlike her messy feelings for Daniel Parker. By the time Rosa arrived home that evening, she had almost convinced herself that the letter was a mistake. She should go to Daniel's house and ask for it back before he read. "It, Rosa, Mrs. Patel from down the street dropped this off for you," her mother said as soon as she walked in, holding out an envelope. "Said it was delivered to her by mistake." Rosa frowned, taking the envelope. It wasn't hers. The paper was expensive, heavy stock, not the kind she would use, and there was no address, just her name written in an elegant, flowing script. "Who's it from?" her mother asked. "I don't know," Rosa said honestly, turning it over in her hands. She took it to her room and sat on the edge of her bed, heart racing as she opened it. The message inside was brief, written in the same elegant handwriting. "You didn't mean for me to read this, but I did. And if this is what it sounds like to love in silence, I'd like to hear more." It was signed simply, CW. Rosa gasped, the realization hitting her like a wave. She had delivered her letter to the wrong house, and whoever had received it, this mysterious CW, had read her most private thoughts and responded. Her first reaction was mortification. Someone had read words meant only for Daniel. But as she read the note again, a different feeling emerged. Curiosity, interest. This stranger hadn't laughed at her feelings. They wanted to hear more. That night, Rosa couldn't sleep. Who was CW? She mentally went through the neighbors who might have received her letter. The Patels lived 2 doors down from Daniel, and after them was the mysterious house, the one that everyone in the neighborhood gossiped about, but no one seemed to know much about. Some said a writer lived there. Others said it was owned by a wealthy recluse. By morning, Rosa had made a decision. She would write back, just once, to explain her mistake and apologize. That was the proper thing to do. But when she sat down with pen and paper, what came out wasn't an apology. "I'm surprised you wrote back. Most people would have ignored a letter that wasn't meant for them, but I'm glad you didn't. Have you ever held words inside for so long that they start to feel like a physical weight?" She sealed the letter in an envelope, writing simply CW on the front. This time she double-checked the house number before slipping it under the door. Cassian hadn't expected a reply. He'd acted on impulse, something he hadn't done in years, but when he found a new envelope under his door the next morning, he felt an unfamiliar flutter in his chest. The handwriting was the same, neat with a slight rightward tilt. He read the letter twice, savoring the words. This stranger understood the weight of unspoken feelings. He knew that weight all too well. He picked up his phone to call his assistant in the city, something he rarely did. "Marcus, I need information on someone in town. A woman, probably in her 20s or 30s, lives a few houses down from me." "Are you actually taking an interest in your neighbors?" Marcus sounded shocked. "Should I alert the media?" "Very funny," Cassian replied dryly. "Just find out what you can." Later that day, Marcus called back. "There are 2 possibilities," he said. "The Martinez family, a widow and her daughter, Rosa Elena. She works as the school librarian. Or the Parkers. The husband works in tech and they have a college-age daughter. They're moving next week." Cassian thanked him and hung up. A librarian. It made sense. The careful handwriting, the thoughtful words. He found himself wanting to know more about her, Taking out his finest stationery, he began to write again. Yes, I know that weight. Words can be like stones we carry, each one adding pressure until it's hard to breathe. Sometimes I think that's why I moved here, to find a place quiet enough to hear myself think. But the silence has its own weight. Tell me, what do your words sound like when you finally let them out? He left the letter in the same spot under his door, hoping she would find it. Rosa Elena couldn't explain, even to herself, why she kept checking the mysterious house for a response. But when she finally found one, 2 days later, she felt a thrill of excitement. This time she didn't take the letter home. Instead, she walked to the small park at the end of the street and sat under an old oak tree to read it. The words struck a chord deep within her. This stranger, this CW, understood something about her that even she hadn't fully realized. The weight of silence, the pressure of words unsaid. Without hesitation, she took out the small notebook she always carried and began to write a response. My words sound like pages turning in an empty room, soft but clear if you're listening. I've always been the quiet one, the girl who stands just outside the light. Not because I'm afraid, but because I see more from there. Do you ever feel like you're watching life instead of living it? Rosa paused, looking at what she'd written. She was sharing thoughts she'd never told anyone, not even her closest friends. It should have felt dangerous. Instead, it felt freeing. On her way home, she slipped the folded page under the door of the mysterious house. That evening, her mother noticed a change in her. "You seem happy tonight," she commented as they prepared dinner together. Rosa smiled. "I am. I think I'm finally letting go of something I've been holding on to for too long." Her mother gave her a knowing look. "Daniel Parker," Rosa looked up in surprise. "How did you know?" "Mothers always know," she said simply. "I've seen how you look at him when he walks by. But lately you seem lighter, as if that weight is gone." Rosa considered this as she chopped vegetables. The truth was, she hadn't thought about Daniel all day. Her mind had been filled with the words of a stranger who somehow seemed to understand her better than anyone ever had. As days turned into weeks, the letters continued. Rosa and Cassian never signed their full names, never mentioned addresses. They created a new system, leaving their letters in a hollow of the old oak tree in the park, wrapped in plastic when it rained, tied with twine when the wind was strong. Into those letters, they shared parts of themselves they had kept hidden from the world. Cassian wrote about the woman he had lost 3 years ago, not the details of her death, but the silence that followed. How the world had seemed to lose its color. How words, once his closest companions, had abandoned him. Rosa wrote about growing up as the quiet daughter of a vivacious mother, about finding refuge in books, about how she sometimes felt invisible in a world that rewarded loudness. Their words grew bolder, softer, more intimate. One rainy afternoon, Rosa left a letter that asked, "Do you believe it's possible to fall in love without knowing someone's face?" The next day, his reply was waiting. "I don't believe in love at first sight. I believe in love before sight." Rosa read those words over and over, her heart racing. Was she falling in love with someone she had never met, someone whose name she didn't even fully know? It seemed impossible, and yet in these letters, she had found a connection deeper than any she had ever experienced. What she didn't know was that across town, Cassian Wolfe was sitting at his desk for the first time in 3 years, words flowing from his fingers. As he began to write again, not letters this time, but the beginning of a new novel. 3 months had passed since Rosa's letter had found its way to the wrong doorstep. Winter had settled over their small Northern California town, bringing foggy mornings and early sunsets. For Rosa, the season had brought unexpected changes. The hollow of the old oak tree in the park had become her secret connection to CW, the mysterious stranger who had awakened something in her. That morning, Rosa hurried through the park, her boots crunching on the frosty grass. She reached the oak tree and slipped her hand into the familiar hollow, her heart quickening when her fingers touched paper. He had written back. She pulled out the envelope, tucking it safely into her coat pocket. She never read his letters right away. She saved them like treasures to be opened in private moments. "Rosa Eleanor," called a voice behind her. Rosa turned to see Mrs. Finley approaching, bundled in a thick scarf. "Good morning, Mrs. Finley," Rosa said, smiling. "What brings you to the park so early?" The older woman asked, eyes twinkling with curiosity. "Just getting some fresh air before work," Rosa said. It wasn't exactly a lie. "Well, it's lucky I ran into you. The book club wants to know if you'll join us next week. We're reading that new mystery everyone's talking about." Rosa nodded politely. "That sounds lovely. I'll check my schedule." As she walked toward the school, Rosa's thoughts drifted back to the letter in her pocket. In 3 months, she and CW had shared so much. Their fears, their dreams, their pasts, but never their full names or where they lived. It was as if they existed in a world apart from reality, a world made of paper and ink and shared secrets. At school, Rosa went through her day on autopilot. She helped students find books, organized a reading corner for the first graders, and attended a faculty meeting. But her mind kept returning to the unopened letter. Finally, alone in the library during her lunch break, she carefully opened the envelope. "I dreamed about you last night. Not your face, I still don't know that, but your words. They were like birds flying through a room where I've been trapped for years, each one showing me the way out. Is it strange that I feel I know you better than people I've seen every day for years? You asked in your last letter if I'm writing again. The answer is yes. After 3 years of silence, the words are coming back. Because of you." Rosa's hands trembled slightly as she read. She knew she should feel unsettled that this stranger was dreaming about her. Instead, she felt a warm glow spreading through her chest. She had learned bits and pieces about him over these months, that he was a writer who had stopped writing after a personal tragedy, that he lived alone and preferred it that way, that he had traveled extensively but now rarely left his house, that books had been his companions since childhood, just like her. She pulled out her notebook and began to write her reply. "I think I'm falling in love with your mind. Is that possible? To fall in love with thoughts and words instead of a face or a touch? My mother asked me yesterday if I was seeing someone new. I didn't know how to answer. I'm not seeing you, but I feel like I'm seeing into you, and you into me. No one has ever known me the way you do." She stopped, staring at what she'd written. It was too bold, too revealing. But that was the beauty of these letters. They allowed her to be braver than she'd ever been. Across town, Cassian sat at his desk, fingers moving steadily over his keyboard. The words flowed in a way they hadn't in years. His new novel, about a man finding his way back to life through unexpected connection, was taking shape. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. He frowned at the screen, then answered. "Yes, Marcus?" "Just checking in," his assistant said. "How's the writing going?" "Better than expected," Cassian admitted. "That's great news," Marcus said, the surprise evident in his voice. "Did something change?" Cassian's eyes drifted to the small wooden box where he kept her letters, every single one from the first mistaken delivery to the most recent. "For you could say that. The publisher is getting anxious. They want to know if they can announce your return." Cassian tensed. "No, not yet. I'm not ready for that kind of attention." After hanging up, he walked to the window. From here, he could see the park where the oak tree stood, where he'd left his letter that morning. He'd been tempted many times to find out exactly who she was, this Rosa Elena Martinez, who wrote such beautiful letters. Marcus could easily give him her address, her history, even a photograph. But something held him back. The magic of their connection existed in that space between anonymity and intimacy. He wasn't ready to break that spell. His doorbell rang, startling him. He rarely had visitors. When he opened the door, he found Mrs. Patel from down the street holding a casserole dish. "Mr. Wolf, I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said with a warm smile. "I made too much food again, and I thought you might enjoy some home cooking." Cassian accepted the dish with awkward thanks. This was why he avoided his neighbors. Their kindness always felt like an intrusion. "You know," Mrs. Patel continued, "there's a neighborhood potluck next weekend. You should join us. Everyone would love to meet you." "That's very kind, but I'm quite busy with work," he replied, already backing into his house. "Well, the invitation stands. We're all curious about..." the famous writer who lives among us. Cassian froze. Excuse me, Mrs. Patel laughed. Oh, don't worry, your secret is safe. My niece is a huge fan of your books. She recognized you once when she was visiting, but we respect your privacy. After she left, Cassian stood in his entryway, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. If Mrs. Patel knew who he was, others might too, including Rosa. The thought bothered him more than it should. What would she think if she knew she had been writing to Cassian Wolf, the reclusive millionaire author? Would she see him differently? Would she stop writing? That evening, Rosa sat with her mother in their cozy living room. The TV played softly in the background, but Rosa wasn't paying attention. Her mind was on the letter she'd left at the oak tree that afternoon. "Mija, are you listening?" her mother asked. Rosa blinked. "I'm sorry, Mama. What did you say?" Her mother gave her a knowing look. "I asked if you wanted to invite Daniel Parker for dinner before they move. The moving truck comes on Friday." Rosa had almost forgotten about Daniel. The crush that had consumed her for years now seemed like a distant memory. "No, there's no need," she said. "We've already said our goodbyes." Her mother studied her face. "There's something different about you lately. You seem happier, more at peace." Rosa smiled. "I am. And does this have something to do with those letters you're always writing?" Rosa looked up in surprise. "How did you know about those?" Her mother laughed softly. "I raised you, Rosa Elena. You think I don't notice when you slip out early to go to the park, or the way you smile when you read those pages you hide in your drawer?" Rosa felt her cheeks warm. "It's not what you think." "No? Then what is it?" How could she explain something she didn't fully understand herself? That she had accidentally delivered a love letter to a stranger, that they now wrote to each other almost daily, that she felt more connected to this anonymous person than anyone she had ever known. "I've been corresponding with someone, a friend?" "Just a friend?" her mother asked, eyebrows raised. Before Rosa could answer, the doorbell rang. Her mother went to answer it, returning moments later with a small, elegant envelope. "This was on the doorstep," she said, handing it to Rosa. "No address, just your name." Rosa's heart skipped a beat. She recognized the handwriting immediately. CW had never delivered a letter to her home before. They had always used the oak tree. "Who is it from?" her mother asked. "A friend," Rosa repeated, clutching the envelope tightly. As soon as she could excuse herself, Rosa hurried to her room and opened the letter with trembling fingers. "I need to tell you something important, something I should have told you from the beginning. I know your full name, I know where you live, not because I've been following you, but because I wanted to understand who had written such beautiful words, who had reached through my darkness and found something still alive. I know your letter wasn't meant for me, but maybe, just maybe, it found exactly where it needed to go. Tomorrow, at sunset, I'll be waiting by the oak tree. If you want to meet the person behind these letters, come find me. If not, I'll understand." It was signed with his full name for the first time, Cassian Wolf. Rosa sat heavily on her bed, shock coursing through her. Cassian Wolf, the famous author, the millionaire recluse. That was who had been writing to her all these months. She remembered the gossip that had circulated when he first moved to town 3 years ago. How his fiancée had died in a car accident, how he had disappeared from public life, how he had stopped writing. And then another realization hit her. He'd known who she was all along. While she had been writing to a stranger, he had been writing to Rosa Elena Martinez, the school librarian. The thought made her feel exposed, vulnerable. She paced her small bedroom, her mind racing. Should she go? Should she meet him? What if the reality couldn't match the connection they'd built through words? She pulled out her box of his letters, reading through them again. The raw honesty, the painful confessions, the slow healing they had shared, none of that seemed fake or calculated. By morning, she had made her decision. Cassian arrived at the oak tree early, his stomach in knots. He hadn't felt this nervous since his first book signing years ago. He had broken their unspoken rule by signing his full name, by asking to meet in person. But he couldn't continue living in two worlds. The silent, empty one where he was Cassian Wolf, reclusive author, and the rich, meaningful one where he exchanged letters with a woman who had awakened his heart. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. A few people walked their dogs in the distance, but otherwise the park was quiet. Would she come, or had his revelation scared her away? Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, he saw her, Rosa Elena Martinez, walking slowly toward the oak tree. In person, she was exactly as he had imagined from her letters. Thoughtful eyes, quiet grace, a book bag slung over her shoulder. She stopped a few feet away, uncertainty written across her face. "Cassian Wolf," she said softly, speaking his name aloud for the first time. He nodded, suddenly unsure what to say. All the eloquent words he had written seemed to have deserted him. "You knew who I was all along," she said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes," he admitted, "but I didn't know you, not until your letters." She looked down at her hands. "I feel strange, like all this time there was an imbalance between us." "I understand," he said. "If you want to walk away right now, I wouldn't blame you." Rosa looked up at him, studying his face. "Your books, they helped me through some difficult times. After my father died, I read The Silent Echo over and over. It made me feel less alone." Cassian swallowed hard. "And your letters did the same for me." They stood in silence for a moment, the gap between them feeling both vast and insignificant. "I'm not what you expected, am I?" Rosa finally said, her voice small. Cassian frowned. "What do you mean?" "I'm just a school librarian, not famous or wealthy or—" "Stop," he said gently. "You're exactly what I expected. The woman who writes with such honesty and depth, the woman who made me want to write again, to feel again." Rosa took a small step forward. "And you're both more and less than I expected. In my mind, CW was just words on paper. Now you're a real person, with a history, a name everyone knows. Does that change things?" he asked, trying to keep the fear from his voice. Rosa was quiet for a long moment, considering. "It changes some things, but not the important ones." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "I wrote this before I knew who you were. Before your letter arrived at my house. I was going to leave it here today." She handed it to him. With careful fingers, Cassian opened it and read, "I think it's time we met. Not because I need to see your face or know your full name, but because the space between letters has become too wide, too empty. Whatever happens when we finally stand, face to face, know this. Your words have changed me, and I hope mine have changed you too." Cassian looked up from the letter, his eyes meeting hers. "They have," he said simply. "More than you know." Rosa smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Then maybe we should start again, with no secrets between us." She held out her hand. "I'm Rosa Elena Martinez, school librarian, collector of first editions, writer of misdirected love letters." Cassian took her hand, feeling its warmth against his palm. "Cassian Wolf, author. Recluse, grateful recipient of misdirected love letters." They both laughed, and something tight in Cassian's chest began to loosen. For the first time in 3 years, the future didn't look like an empty page he was afraid to fill. "Would you like to take a walk?" he asked. Rosa nodded. "I'd like that." As they strolled through the park, the first stars appearing overhead, they began to talk. Not in the careful, crafted sentences of their letters, but in the messy, imperfect words of real conversation. "I should tell you," Rosa said hesitantly, "the letter you received, the first one, it was meant for someone else." "I know," Cassian replied. "You mentioned watering plants and smiling at your mother, things I've never done. It was for Daniel. Parker, he lives a few houses down from you. I had a crush on him for years." "And now?" Cassian asked, trying to sound casual. Rosa looked at him, her eyes clear and direct. "Now I know the difference between a crush and something deeper. A crush is about what you imagine someone to be. This, what we've built through our letters, is about who we really are." Cassian felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "When Elaine died, my fiancée, I thought that was it for me, that I'd never feel anything again. I didn't want to. And now?" Rosa echoed his question. "Now I'm standing here with a woman who knows my darkest thoughts and hasn't run away, a woman who helped me find my voice again." He paused. A woman I think I could fall in love with, if she gave me the chance. Rosa's breath caught. It was too soon for such admissions, and yet it wasn't. They had shared so much already. I'm scared, she admitted. This all feels like a story. The kind I'd read in one of your books. The misdelivered letter, the anonymous correspondence, the famous author and the ordinary librarian. You're far from ordinary, Cassian said firmly, and life is full of stories stranger than fiction. Maybe we're just living one. As they reached the edge of the park, Rosa stopped. I should go home. My mother will be wondering where I am. Cassian nodded, suddenly reluctant to end their first real meeting. Can I see you again? Tomorrow? Rosa smiled. Yes, but no more letters under doors or in tree hollows. From now on we talk face to face. Agreed, Cassian said, though I may still write to you sometimes. Old habits die hard. As they parted ways, both felt the strange sensation of endings and beginnings intertwined. The anonymous C.W. and the unknown letter writer were gone. In their place stood Cassian and Rosa, real people with real lives that were about to become entangled in ways neither could fully predict. What neither realized was that someone had been watching their meeting from a distance. Someone who recognized Cassian Wolf and knew exactly what a photograph of the reclusive author would be worth to the right tabloid. By morning, their private moment would become very public indeed. Rosa woke to the insistent buzzing of her phone. She reached for it groggily, squinting at the screen. 5 missed calls from her friend Mia, plus a dozen text messages. What could be so urgent at 7 in the morning? She sat up and opened the first message. It contained a link and the words, "OMG Rosa, is this you?" Her stomach tightened as she clicked the link. It opened to a gossip website with the headline, "Reclusive author Cassian Wolf spotted with mystery woman." Below the headline was a photo of her and Cassian standing by the oak tree in the park, his hand holding hers. The caption read, "After 3 years of seclusion following his fiancée's tragic death, best-selling author Cassian Wolf appears to have found love again with an unidentified local woman. Sources say Wolf has been living quietly in Northern California since withdrawing from public life." Rosa's hand flew to her mouth. She scrolled down to read more. Wolf, 31, whose 5 novels have sold millions of copies worldwide, has not published. Since the car accident that claimed the life of his fiancée, model Elena Vasquez, the author's representatives have repeatedly stated that he is on an indefinite hiatus from writing. This is the first time he has been photographed in public in nearly 3 years. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Mia. "Call me right now." Before she could respond, her mother knocked on her bedroom door. "Rosa, Elena, are you awake? There's something strange happening." Rosa swallowed hard. "Come in, Mama." Her mother entered, looking concerned. "Mrs. Finley just called. She says there are photographers outside our house. What's going on?" Rosa showed her the article. Her mother sat heavily on the edge of the bed, eyes wide. "Cassian Wolf, the famous writer, he's your letter friend." "Yes," Rosa admitted. "I just found out yesterday who he really was." Her mother shook her head in disbelief. "And now everyone else knows too." Rosa's phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. She let it go to voicemail. "What are you going to do?" her mother asked. "I don't know," Rosa said honestly. She'd never been the center of attention before. The thought of strangers taking her picture, speculating about her relationship with Cassian, it made her feel sick. Another call, another unknown number. Then another. How did they find out who I am, she wondered aloud. Her mother gave her a sympathetic look. "It's a small town, Mija. People talk." Rosa nodded, remembering Mrs. Finley's curious eyes when she'd seen her by the oak tree. It wouldn't take much for someone to connect the dots. She hesitated, then dialed Cassian's number. He had given it to her last night, just before they parted. It went straight to voicemail. "Cassian, it's Rosa. I've seen the article. The photo, I don't know what to do. Please call me back." She hung up, feeling lost. This wasn't what she had signed up for. Their connection had been private, intimate. Now it was being exposed to the world before they'd even had a chance to figure it out for themselves. Her mother squeezed her hand. "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you." A text notification appeared on Rosa's phone. From Cassian. I'm so sorry about this. Stay inside. I'm sending someone to help. Rosa frowned. Someone to help? What did that mean? 20 minutes later, there was a knock at their front door. Rosa's mother answered it to find a tall, well-dressed man in his 40s. Good morning, Mrs. Martinez. My name is Marcus Reed, Mr. Wolf's personal assistant. May I come in? Cassian paced his study, anger and anxiety coursing through him. He should have been more careful. He should have known that meeting Rosa in public would attract attention. Marcus had called him at dawn with the news. The photo was already spreading across social media. Reporters were trying to identify Rosa. His publisher had called 6 times. This was exactly why he had retreated from the world after Elaine's death. The constant intrusion, the loss of privacy. He had hoped that 3 years of silence would make the public forget about him. Clearly, he'd been wrong. His phone rang yet again. His agent this time. Diane, I can't talk right now, he said tersely. Cassian, you need to get ahead of this, Diane insisted. Make a statement. Confirm you're writing again. People are excited. People need to mind their own business, he snapped. This is good publicity. Your new book, I haven't even told my publisher about the new book. How do you know about it? There was a pause. Marcus mentioned it. Look, Cassian, this could be your comeback moment. The reclusive author returns with a new love and a new novel. Cassian's grip tightened on his phone. Rosa is not a publicity stunt, and neither is my writing. Of course not, but since it's already out there, I have to go, he interrupted. Marcus is calling. He switched to the other line. Marcus, is she okay? I'm with her now, Marcus said calmly. She's shaken up, but handling it well. There are about a dozen reporters outside her house. Cassian closed his eyes, guilt washing over him. This is my fault. It was bound to happen eventually if you two are seeing each other, Marcus said pragmatically. The question is, what do we do now? Cassian ran a hand through his hair. Get her out of there. Bring her here if she's willing. My place is more secure. Are you sure that's wise? It will only fuel the speculation. I don't care about speculation. I care about her feeling safe. After hanging up, Cassian went to the window. From here, he could see a few photographers gathering at the end of his driveway. His security system and gate kept them at a distance, at least. He thought of Rosa, thrust into this madness without warning. Would she want to run from it all? From him? He wouldn't blame her if she did. His doorbell rang. Security would have stopped any reporters, so it had to be someone he knew. He opened the door to find Mrs. Patel standing there, looking concerned. Mr. Wolf, I just wanted to check if you're all right. Those people with cameras are back. He managed a tight smile. I'm fine, Mrs. Patel. Thank you for your concern. She hesitated. I also wanted to apologize. I may have mentioned to my book club that I had seen you and the Martinez girl talking in the park. I had no idea it would lead to this. Cassian's heart sank. So that was how it had started. It's not your fault, he said, though part of him wanted to blame someone, anyone, for this invasion of his carefully constructed privacy. After Mrs. Patel left, Cassian returned to his study. On his desk lay the manuscript he had started after Rosa's first letter found its way under his door. 3 months of writing, inspired by their correspondence. He sat down and reread the first page. It was the story of a man who had closed himself off from the world and the unexpected connection that brought him back to life. Fiction, but barely. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. She's agreed to come. We'll be there in 20 minutes. Relief flooded through him. She hadn't run away, not yet. In Marcus's sleek black car with tinted windows, Rosa sat silently, trying to process everything that was happening. The reporters shouting questions as she'd hurried from her front door, the flashes of cameras, her mother's worried face as she'd promised to call later. Mr. Wolf feels terrible about this, Marcus said, breaking the silence. He values his privacy greatly, and now yours has been compromised as well. It's not his fault, Rosa said quietly. Neither of us thought anyone was watching. Marcus gave her a sympathetic look in the rearview mirror. Fame comes with a price, one that Mr. Wolf has been unwilling to pay for the past 3 years. Because of his fiancée? Rosa asked. She knew the broad strokes from the gossip article, but Cassian had never shared the full story in his letters. Yes, Marcus confirmed. Helena's death was very public. The paparazzi were actually chasing their car when the accident happened. Rosa's stomach turned. That's horrible. Mr. Wolf blamed himself. He was driving, but he also blamed the media. He retreated completely after that. Moved here for the anonymity. And now I've ruined that for him, Rosa said, feeling a weight of guilt. Not at all, Marcus said firmly. This is the first time I've seen him willing to face the outside world in 3 years. Whatever has happened between you two, it's been good for him. They turned onto a long, private driveway that led to Cassian's house. Rosa had never seen it up close before. It was larger than she had imagined, but not ostentatious, a craftsman-style home set back from the road, surrounded by tall pines. As they approached, Rosa could see Cassian waiting on the front porch. When the car stopped, he hurried down the steps to open her door. "Rosa, I'm so sorry about all of this," he said as soon as she stepped out. She looked up at him, seeing the genuine distress in his eyes. "It's not your fault." "It is. I should have been more careful. I know what these people are like." Marcus cleared his throat. "I'll give you two some privacy. I need to make some calls anyway." As Marcus walked away, Rosa and Cassian stood awkwardly on the driveway. Everything felt different in the daylight, with the weight of public exposure hanging over them. "Come inside," Cassian finally said. "Please." The interior of his home was both exactly what Rosa had expected and nothing like it at all. The furniture was expensive but comfortable looking, bookshelves lined nearly every wall, but there were also empty spaces that looked like things had been removed, picture frames perhaps, or personal mementos. "Can I get you anything? Coffee, tea?" Cassian asked, his formal tone betraying his nervousness. "Just answers," Rosa said. "What happens now?" Cassian sighed, gesturing for her to sit on the sofa while he took the chair opposite. "Now we have choices to make." "What kind of choices?" "We could try to wait it out. News cycles move quickly. Eventually they'll lose interest." "How long would that take?" Cassian shrugged. "A few weeks? Maybe longer. Especially if what? If they find out about my new book. My agent already knows somehow. It's only a matter of time before it gets out." Rosa looked at him with surprise. "You're really writing again?" A small smile crossed his face. "Yes, because of you. Because of your letters." The simple admission hung in the air between them, a reminder of the connection that had brought them to this point. "What's the other choice?" Rosa asked softly. "We could give them what they want. A statement, a controlled interview. Something to satisfy their curiosity so they'll leave us alone." Rosa shook her head. "I don't want to be in the spotlight. I'm not like your fiancé. I'm not used to that world." Cassian leaned forward. Elena wasn't either at first. She was just a small-town girl who was discovered by a modeling agency. The attention overwhelmed her sometimes. "Is that why?" Rosa hesitated, unsure how to ask about the accident delicately. "Why we were being chased by photographers?" "Partly." Cassian's face hardened. "We'd just announced our engagement. The media was obsessed with the story, the famous author and the beautiful model. We were trying to get away for the weekend, somewhere private. They followed us on the coastal highway. It was raining. I was driving too fast, trying to lose them." His voice broke. Rosa moved instinctively to sit beside him, taking his hand in hers. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to," she said gently. Cassian squeezed her hand. "I've never told anyone the whole story. Not even in my letters to you." He took a deep breath. "I blamed myself for years. If I'd been driving more carefully, if I hadn't tried to outrun them, if I'd just given them the damn photos they wanted." "It wasn't your fault," Rosa said firmly. "That's what everyone said, but I couldn't write after that. Every time I sat at my desk, all I could see was her face. All I could hear was the sound of metal crushing metal." He paused. "Until your letter arrived." Rosa's throat tightened with emotion. "And now the photographers are back." "Yes, but this time I won't let them dictate how we live our lives." He looked at her intently. "That is, If you still want there to be an us after all this. The question caught Rosa off guard. Did she? The connection they'd built through letters had been so powerful, so meaningful, but now reality had intruded, bringing complications she'd never anticipated. I don't know, she answered honestly. Everything's happening so fast. Yesterday I didn't even know you were Cassian Wolf. Today I'm hiding from reporters and learning about your past, and everyone is speculating about our relationship. It's overwhelming. Cassian nodded, his expression somber. I understand. It's a lot to take in. Before Rosa could say more, Marcus returned, his expression grave. We have a problem, he announced. Someone's leaked Rosa's name to the press. It's everywhere now. School librarian captures heart of reclusive author. They've even found photos of you from the school website. Rosa felt the blood drain from her face. My work, the school. I've already called the principal, Marcus assured her. She's aware of the situation and is keeping reporters off school property. Cassian stood, anger flashing in his eyes. This has gone too far. I'm going to issue a statement. Make it clear that Rosa's privacy is to be respected. And if they don't listen, Rosa asked weakly. Cassian and Marcus exchanged looks. There's somewhere you could go, Cassian said slowly. A place I own on the coast. It's very private, very secure. You could stay there until this dies down. Rosa's mind reeled. Leave her home, her job, her mother? I can't just disappear, she protested. Not permanently, Cassian assured her. Just until we figure this out. We, Rosa repeated, a strange mix of emotions swirling within her. Cassian hesitated. I'd like to come with you, if you'll let me. But if you'd prefer to be alone, I understand. The offer hung in the air between them, an escape, a chance to figure out their feelings away from prying eyes, but also an even bigger step into Cassian's world, a world Rosa wasn't sure she belonged in. I need to think, she said finally. And I need to talk to my mother, Cassian nodded. Of course, take all the time you need. But as Marcus's phone rang yet again, and Cassian's expression darkened as he listened to the call, Rosa realized that time might be a luxury they didn't have. By evening, the situation had escalated beyond anything Rosa could have imagined. Her mother had called to say that reporters were now camped outside both their house and the school. Friends and colleagues were being approached for comments about Rosa's relationship with Cassian. Someone had even managed to track down Daniel Parker, the man for whom her original letter had been intended, for his reaction to the story. This is insane, Rosa said, sitting at Cassian's kitchen table while he prepared dinner. They're treating this like some big scandal. We just met face to face yesterday. Cassian set a glass of wine in front of her. Welcome to my world, he said grimly. It wasn't always this bad, but after Elena, after I disappeared, I became something of a mystery. People love mysteries. And now I'm part of it. Rosa took a sip of wine, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. The mysterious woman who brought Cassian Wolf back from seclusion. I'm sorry, Cassian said softly. I never meant for any of this to happen. Rosa looked up at him. In the warm light of his kitchen, with the concern etched on his face, he seemed less like the famous author and more like the man who had written those thoughtful, honest letters. If I hadn't delivered my letter to the wrong door, none of this would have happened, she pointed out. A small smile touched Cassian's lips. Do you regret it? Rosa considered the question. Did she? The letters had brought her joy, understanding, connection. They had awakened feelings she hadn't known she was capable of. But this, the invasion of her privacy, the disruption of her quiet life. I don't know, she answered truthfully. Ask me again when I'm not hiding from photographers. Cassian nodded, turning back to the stove. Fair enough. They ate dinner at his kitchen table, talking about safer topics, books they loved, places they'd traveled, childhood memories. For a little while it felt almost normal, as if they were just two people getting to know each other better. After dinner, Cassian showed her to the guest room where she could stay the night. I've asked Marcus to bring some of your things from your house. Your mother is helping him pack a bag. Thank you, Rosa said, touched by his thoughtfulness. For everything. Cassian lingered in the doorway. Rosa, about the coastal house. You don't have to decide anything tonight, but the offer stands for as long as you need it. She nodded, suddenly too exhausted to think about it further. Good night, Cassian. Good night, he replied softly. Closing the door behind him. Alone in the unfamiliar room, Rosa sat on the edge of the bed trying to make sense of her life's sudden dramatic turn. Just 3 months ago, she had been the quiet librarian with an unrequited crush. Now she was hiding from reporters because of her connection to a famous author. She pulled out her phone, steeling herself before checking the news. As expected, their story was everywhere. Most articles portrayed it as a romantic fairy tale, the reclusive author finding love again with a small-town librarian. A few speculated about whether this meant Cassian was writing again. One particularly cruel piece compared her unfavorably to Elena Vasquez, his model fiancée, with side-by-side photos. Rosa set the phone down, a knot forming in her stomach. She wasn't cut out for this level of scrutiny. She had always been the quiet one, the observer rather than the observed. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Rosa," Cassian called quietly. "Are you still awake?" She opened the door to find him standing there, a stack of papers in his hand. "I thought you might like to read this," he said, offering her the papers. "It's what I've been working on, the book that your letters inspired." Rosa took the manuscript, surprised. "You want me to read it?" Cassian nodded. "You're the reason it exists. And I trust you." Those 3 words, spoken so simply, seemed to cut through all the chaos of the day. I trust you. After years of keeping the world at a distance, he was letting her in. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'd be honored." As Cassian turned to leave, Rosa made a decision. "Cassian," he paused, looking back at her, "I'll go to the coastal house, with you, just until things calm down." Relief washed over his face. "Are you sure?" Rosa nodded. "Yes, but not because I'm running away, because I think we need time to figure out what this is between us without the whole world watching." Cassian smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him all day. "I'll make the arrangements." After he left, Rosa settled into bed with the manuscript. The title page read simply, "The Letter." As she began to read, she was drawn into the story of a man who had lost everything and the unexpected correspondence that brought him back to life. It wasn't their story exactly. Cassian had changed many details, but the emotional truth of it resonated on every page. She read late into the night, eventually falling asleep with the manuscript on her chest, her heart full of words, his and hers, that had somehow managed to find their way to exactly where they needed to be. Meanwhile, in another part of town, a woman sat at her computer, staring at the photos of Cassian and Rosa that were spreading across the internet. Elena Vasquez's sister, Lucia, had been watching Cassian from afar for 3 years, waiting for him to emerge from seclusion. Now he had, for another woman. Her finger hovered over the send button of an email to a tabloid reporter. An email containing information that would change everything for Cassian and Rosa. With a decisive click, she sent it. By morning, the story would take yet another unexpected turn. Rosa woke to the sound of urgent voices coming from downstairs. She glanced at the clock, 6:15 a.m. Too early for social calls. Something was wrong. She quickly dressed and made her way toward the voices. Cassian and Marcus were in the study, both looking at a laptop with grim expressions. "What's happening?" she asked from the doorway. They looked up, startled. Cassian's face was pale, his jaw tight. "Rosa," he said, gesturing for her to come in. "There's been a development." She approached cautiously, noticing the open web page on the laptop. It was another gossip site, but the headline made her blood run cold. "Exclusive Cassian Wolf's fiancé alive and demanding answers." "What?" she gasped, looking more closely at the article. Marcus cleared his throat. "It's not true. Elena is dead. I identified her body myself after the accident." "Then what is this?" Rosa asked, scanning the article with growing horror. Cassian ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Lucia, Elena's sister." The article featured a recent photo of a woman who looked remarkably like the photos Rosa had seen of Elena Vasquez. Tall, striking, with the same high cheekbones and dark eyes. "She's claiming that she's Elena?" Rosa asked, confused. "No," Cassian said, his voice strained. "She's claiming that I abandoned Elena after the accident, that I knew she survived, but left her because of her injuries." Rosa sank into a nearby chair, stunned. That's horrible. Why would she say such things?" Marcus and Cassian exchanged looks. "Lucia and I have a complicated history," Cassian said carefully. "She never approved of my relationship with Elena. After the accident, she blamed me entirely. She even tried to prevent me from attending the funeral. She's been silent for 3 years, Marcus added. "Why come forward now?" The answer hung unspoken in the air. Because of Rosa. Because Cassian was emerging from his isolation, possibly finding happiness again. "What does she want?" Rosa asked. "Money, probably," Marcus said, cynically. "These kinds of accusations usually lead to demands for settlements." Cassian shook his head. "No. Lucia doesn't need money. The Vasquez family is wealthy in their own right." He closed the laptop, as if he couldn't bear to look at the article any longer. "She wants to hurt me, and now she's using you to do it." Rosa felt a chill. "Me?" "The article mentions you specifically," Marcus explained reluctantly. "It suggests that Cassian's new romance is what prompted Lucia to reveal the truth about what happened 3 years ago." Rosa wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling very vulnerable. "So what do we do?" "We're leaving for the coastal house right away," Cassian said decisively. "Marcus has already arranged it. The car will be ready in 30 minutes. "But please, Rosa," Cassian pleaded, his eyes troubled. "I can't let you get dragged any further into this mess. The coastal house is private, secure. We'll be safe there while we figure this out." She wanted to argue, to suggest that running away might make things worse. But the desperation in Cassian's voice stopped her. This wasn't just about the media attention anymore. This was about protecting both of them from something far more personal and painful. "All right," she agreed softly. "Let me pack my things." The coastal house turned out to be a beautiful modern structure, perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. Under different circumstances, Rosa would have been awestruck by the floor-to-ceiling windows, offering panoramic ocean views, the spacious rooms filled with light, the private path leading down to a secluded beach. But as Marcus's car pulled away, leaving her and Cassian alone, all she felt was a growing sense of unreality. How had she ended up here? Hiding out in a millionaire's beach house, caught in the middle of a scandal. "It's beautiful," she said, because it seemed like the polite thing to say. Cassian stood by the windows, looking out at the churning waves. Below. "I bought it for Elena. She loved the ocean." He turned to face Rosa. "I haven't been back here since before the accident." The admission hung heavily between them. Rosa wasn't sure how to respond. She felt like an intruder in a space filled with memories of another woman. "I can show you to your room," Cassian offered, breaking the awkward silence. "You must be tired after everything." Rosa nodded, following him through the house. Her room was on the 2nd floor with its own private balcony and ocean view. Like everything else about Cassian's world, it was beautiful, expensive, and completely foreign to her experience. "I'll be downstairs if you need anything," Cassian said, lingering in the doorway. "Try to get some rest." After he left, Rosa sat on the edge of the bed, feeling more alone than ever. She pulled out her phone to call her mother, but there was no signal. Of course, isolation was the whole point of this place. She wandered onto the balcony, breathing in the salt air. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, powerful and indifferent to the human drama unfolding on its shores. How simple everything had seemed when she was just writing letters to an anonymous correspondent. How complicated it had become when that correspondent turned out to be Cassian Wolfe. Downstairs, she found Cassian in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee. "I'm afraid I'm out of practice with hospitality," he admitted with a small smile. "I don't entertain much these days." "I can help," Rosa offered, moving to his side. The familiar task of making coffee gave her hands something to do, her mind something to focus on besides their strange situation. As they sat at the kitchen island with their coffee, Cassian finally addressed the elephant in the room. "I owe you an explanation. About Lucia. About what really happened after the accident." Rosa met his gaze. "Only if you want to tell me." Cassian took a deep breath. "Elena and I met at a book signing. She wasn't famous yet, just starting her modeling career. We fell in love quickly, maybe too quickly. Within 6 months we were engaged." He paused, staring into his coffee cup as if it might contain the right words. "Lucia never liked me. She thought I was too controlling, too possessive. Maybe she was right. I was jealous of the men Elena worked with. I hated the traveling her career required. We argued about it often." Rosa listened silently, seeing a different side of Cassian than the thoughtful, gentle man who had written those letters. The night of the accident, we'd had a fight. About her career again. About a modeling job in Paris that would have separated us for months. His voice grew strained. "I wanted her to skip it, to focus on planning our wedding instead. She accused me of trying to control her life." He stood abruptly, moving to the window. "We decided to drive to this house, to talk things through away from distractions. The paparazzi followed us. It was raining. I was driving too fast, still, angry from our fight. When I lost control of the car, his voice broke. Rosa moved to stand beside him, close but not touching. "It wasn't your fault," she said softly. "Accidents happen." Cassian shook his head. "Lucia didn't see it that way. At the hospital, while Elena was in surgery, Lucia told me that I had as good as killed her sister, that I had been trying to control Elena to clip her wings, that if she died it would be because I couldn't let her be free." He turned to face Rosa, his eyes haunted. "When the doctors told us Elena hadn't made it, Lucia became hysterical. She attacked me in the waiting room, screaming that I had murdered her sister. Security had to pull her off me." "That's terrible," Rosa whispered. "After that, she made it her mission to destroy me. She talked to the press, tried to suggest that I had been drinking that night, which wasn't true. She filed complaints with the police, demanding they investigate me for reckless driving. Nothing came of it legally, but the court of public opinion was less forgiving." "Is that why you disappeared?" Cassian nodded. "Partly. I also couldn't bear the guilt. Not because I believed Lucia's accusations, but because there was a grain of truth in what she said. I had been trying to control Elena's life. I had been selfish about her career. Our last conversation was an argument." He trailed off, the pain still evident in his voice 3 years later. "So now Lucia is using me to hurt you again," Rosa said, the pieces falling into place. "Yes, I'm sorry you've been dragged into this." Rosa was quiet for a moment, processing everything. "What will you do? About her accusations?" "Marcus is already on it. We'll issue a statement categorically denying everything. There are hospital records, death certificates, police reports, all confirming what really happened." "And us? What about this?" Rosa gestured vaguely between them. Cassian's expression softened. "That's entirely up to you. I brought you here to protect you from the media circus, not to pressure you into anything." Before Rosa could respond, a landline phone rang somewhere in the house. Cassian frowned. "That's strange. Only Marcus has this number." He went to answer it, returning moments later with a troubled expression. "That was the security service. Apparently someone is at the gate, a woman claiming to be Lucia Vasquez." Rosa's heart sank. "How did she find us?" "I don't know," Cassian said, his face grim. "But she's demanding to speak with me. With both of..." "So are you going to let her in?" Cassian hesitated. "I think I have to. This needs to end once and for all." 30 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up the driveway. Rosa watched nervously from the living room window as a tall, elegant woman emerged. Even from a distance, the resemblance to the photos she'd seen of Elena was striking. "Stay here," Cassian said, his voice tense. "I'll speak to her alone first." "No," Rosa said firmly. "Whatever she has to say, I should hear it too. I'm already involved, whether we like it or not." Cassian looked like he wanted to argue, but the determined set of Rosa's jaw stopped him. "All right, but let me do the talking." They went to the door together. Cassian opened it, just as Lucia reached the top step. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Tall and elegant in an expensive suit, her dark hair pulled back in a severe style that emphasized her sharp cheekbones and intense eyes. "Cassian," she said coolly. "It's been a while." "Lucia," he responded, his voice equally cold. "How did you find this place?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Elena told me about it. She described it in detail during our last phone call, the one where she also told me about your fight." Rosa felt Cassian tense beside her, but his face revealed nothing. "What do you want?" he asked. Lucia's gaze shifted to Rosa, assessing her with a dismissive glance. "I wanted to meet the woman who finally got you to emerge from your self-imposed exile. The woman apparently worth more than my sister." "That's not fair," Rosa found herself saying. "You don't know anything about me or about us." Lucia raised an eyebrow. "Us? So there is an us already? That was quick." "Enough, Lucia," Cassian said sharply. "You've said your piece to the tabloids. You've thrown your accusations. What more do you want?" "Justice," she said simply. "Recognition of what you did to Elena, acknowledgement of the truth." "The truth is that Elena died in that accident," Cassian said, his voice strained. "I loved her. I mourned her. I'm still mourning her." Lucia laughed bitterly. "Are you? It doesn't look that way from the photos I've seen." Rosa felt a surge of anger. "You don't get to dictate how long someone grieves, or when they're allowed to feel something new." Both Cassian and Lucia looked at her with surprise, as if they'd forgotten she was there. "And what exactly do you feel?" Lucia asked, her tone mocking. "Love at first sight for the famous author? Or just excitement at being with someone rich and well-known?" "Stop it," Cassian interrupted. "Rosa is not part of this. Your issue is with me. My issue is with anyone who helps you pretend to be the victim," Lucia shot back. "When all along you were the one who—" "Who what?" Cassian challenged. "Go ahead, say it again. Tell Rosa your lies about how I abandoned Elena, how I knew she survived." A tense silence fell. Rosa looked between them, feeling the weight of years of pain and anger. "Why now?" she asked Lucia quietly. "It's been 3 years. Why come forward with these accusations now?" Something flickered in Lucia's eyes, uncertainty perhaps, or something deeper. "Because he doesn't deserve to be happy," she said finally. "Not after what happened." "That's not for you to decide," Rosa said gently. Lucia turned away abruptly, moving to the window to look out at the ocean. When she spoke again, her voice was different, less angry, more broken. "She was going to break up with you that weekend, did you know that?" Cassian stared at her, shock evident on his face. "What? The fight you had? About Paris? It wasn't just about the modeling job. She wanted space, time to think. She told me on the phone that she wasn't sure about the engagement anymore." Rosa watched Cassian absorb this new information, saw the pain it caused him, but also perhaps a flicker of recognition, as if some part of him had known all along. "Why are you telling me this now?" he asked hoarsely. Lucia turned back to face them. "Because I need you to understand what was taken from her. She never got the chance to make that choice, to decide what she really wanted. She never got to find out who she could become without you." The three of them stood in silence, the weight of Lucia's words hanging in the air. Rosa felt like an intruder in a private moment, yet somehow also essential to it, a witness to this long-overdue confrontation. "I'm sorry," Cassian said finally. "I truly am, for all of it. For the fights, for the control, for the accident. I've spent 3 years punishing myself, Lucia. Isn't that enough?" Lucia studied his face. Whatever she saw there seemed to soften, her slightly. "The article," she said. "I can retract it, issue a statement saying it was all a misunderstanding." Cassian nodded. "Thank you." Lucia's gaze shifted to Rosa. "You should know what you're getting into. He's not an easy man to love. Elena found that out too late." Rosa met her eyes steadily. "I think that's for me to discover for myself." A ghost of a smile touched Lucia's lips. "Fair enough." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "She would have liked you, I think. Elena. She always said Cassian needed someone who would stand up to him." With that, she was gone, the sound of her car engine fading as she drove away. Cassian and Rosa stood in silence for a long moment, processing what had just happened. Finally, Cassian sank onto the sofa, looking exhausted. "I'm sorry you had to witness that," he said. Rosa sat beside him. "Don't be. I needed to understand. Does it change things, knowing about Elena? About the kind of man I was?" Rosa considered the question carefully. Did it change things? The Cassian that Lucia had described, controlling, possessive, seemed at odds with the thoughtful man who had written those beautiful letters. But people were complex, contradictory. The Cassian of 3 years ago wasn't necessarily the Cassian. "Sitting beside her now, I think," she said slowly, "that we all have parts of ourselves we're not proud of. Mistakes we've made. What matters is whether we learn from them." "I'd like to think I have," Cassian said quietly. "The man who wrote those letters to you, that's who I want to be now." Rosa smiled. "That's the man I've come to care for." Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting long golden rays across the ocean. The storm of Lucia's visit had passed, leaving a strange calm in its wake. "What happens now?" Rosa asked. Cassian reached for her hand, his touch tentative. "That depends on what you want." Rosa looked at their intertwined fingers. "I want time. To get to know you. The real you. Not just the words on paper. To figure out if what I feel is real or just the romance of anonymous letters." "I can give you time," Cassian promised. "As much as you need." Rosa smiled. "And I think we should go home. Face the music. Hiding away here, as beautiful as it is, feels like running from reality." Cassian nodded. "You're right. I've been running. For 3 years. It's time to stop." 1 month later, Rosa shelved the last of the returned books, checking her watch. The school day had ended an hour ago, and she needed to finish up before heading to her evening plans. "Miss Martinez," called a voice from the library entrance. She turned to see Tommy, one of her third-grade regulars, clutching a book to his chest. "Yes, Tommy? Is this the book you told me about? The one with the dragons?" Rosa smiled, examining the cover. "That's the one. I think you'll really enjoy it." "My mom says you wrote a book too," Tommy said, his eyes wide. "Is that true?" Rosa laughed softly. "Not exactly, but I did help someone else with their book." After checking out Tommy's book, Rosa locked up the library and headed to her car. The media frenzy had died down considerably in the past month. Lucia had kept her word, issuing a statement retracting her accusations and apologizing for misunderstandings fueled by grief. There had been a flurry of follow-up stories, but with no new scandal to report, interest had gradually waned. Rosa's life had mostly returned to normal, if you could call it normal when you were dating Cassian Wolf. They had taken things slowly after returning from the coastal house. Cassian had stayed in his home, Rosa in hers. They'd had proper dates, dinners, walks in the park, though no longer at the oak tree, which had become something of a tourist attraction, quiet evenings talking in person instead of through letters. Hadn't been easy. The transition from anonymous correspondence to real people with messy histories had its challenges. There were misunderstandings, arguments even, but there was also a deepening of the connection that had begun with that misdirected letter. Today marked a special occasion. Cassian had submitted his completed manuscript to his publisher, the novel inspired by their letters, and tonight he was taking Rosa to dinner to celebrate. As she pulled up to his house, Rosa felt a flutter of anticipation. These past few months had been a whirlwind, from quiet librarian to the center of a media storm and back again. But through it all, the one constant had been the words they shared, first on paper, now in person. Cassian opened the door before she could ring the bell, greeting her with a warm smile. "Ready?" he asked. "Almost," Rosa replied. "I have something for you first." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope, plain white, sealed with a small daisy sticker. Cassian's eyes widened in recognition. "Another letter?" he asked, taking it carefully. Rosa nodded. "Some things are still easier to say on paper." Cassian opened the envelope, unfolding the single sheet inside. As he read, his expression softened, emotions playing across his face. When he looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Are you sure?" Rosa smiled. I am. The letter was short, just a few lines. To the man who taught me to be brave with my words. I've spent these past months getting to know you. Not just your words, but your laugh, your frowns, your morning coffee ritual, the way you get lost in thought mid-conversation. And I've discovered something important. I don't just love the words anymore. I love the man who writes them. So this isn't a confession, just a beginning. Cassian carefully folded the letter and slipped it into his pocket, next to his heart. I have something for you too, he said, taking her hand and leading her into his study. On his desk lay a book, not a manuscript now, but a bound-proof copy with a simple, elegant cover. The title read, The Letter, and below it, by Cassian Wolfe. He handed it to her. Open it. Rosa turned to the dedication page, her breath catching when she read the words printed there. To R.E.M., who delivered her heart to the wrong doorstep and, in doing so, found exactly where it belonged. She looked up at him, too moved to speak. I meant every word, Cassian said softly. Both in here and in all the letters. Rosa set the book gently on the desk, then stepped forward into his embrace. I'm glad I got the address wrong, she whispered against his shoulder. Cassian laughed, the sound lighter than she had ever heard. The best mistake you ever made. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Rosa thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The misdirected letter, the anonymous correspondence, the revelation of identities, the public scrutiny, the confrontation with the past. None of it had been easy. But all of it had been necessary to bring them here, to this quiet understanding, this deep connection that had begun with words on paper and grown into something real and lasting. So, Cassian said, pulling back slightly to look into her eyes, what if I write you a second letter? Rosa smiled, recognizing her own words from months ago. Then I'll write 1,000 replies. And in that moment, with the afternoon sun streaming through the window and the promise of countless words yet to be shared between them, Rosa knew that her heart had indeed found exactly where it belonged. Not in the hands of her longtime crush, who had never truly seen her, not in the pages of a romance novel, where love was always simple and perfect, but here with a man who understood both the power and the limitation of words. A man who had learned, as she had, that the most important stories are the ones we write together. 1 year later, the small Northern California town was buzzing with excitement. Local librarian Rosa Elena Martinez was getting married today, and not to just anyone, to best-selling author Cassian Wolfe, whose latest novel, The Letter, had topped the charts for months. The ceremony was being held in the town park, under the spreading branches of a certain oak tree that had played such an important role in their story. Despite Cassian's fame, they had managed to keep the wedding small and intimate, just close friends and family, with strict security keeping. The media at bay. In a quiet corner of the park, Rosa stood with her mother, who was helping adjust her simple lace veil. Nervous, mija? Her mother asked. Rosa shook her head, smiling. Not at all, it feels right. And it did. After a year of getting to know each other in the real world, of working through their fears and insecurities, of building something stronger than the fantasy their letters had created, Rosa was certain of her choice. Cassian waited beneath the oak tree, looking more relaxed and happy than most people in town had ever seen him. When Rosa appeared, walking toward him on her mother's arm, his face lit up with a joy that needed no words to express. As they joined hands before the minister, Rosa noticed a small envelope tucked into Cassian's jacket pocket, her original letter, the one that had found its way under the wrong door. He had kept it all this time, a reminder of how their story began. Dearly beloved, the minister began, we are gathered here today to witness the union of two people whose love story reminds us that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a single misstep. Rosa squeezed Cassian's hand, thinking of all the letters they had shared, all the words they had written to each other. But the most important words were still to come, the promises they would make today, and all the stories they would write together in the years ahead. As they exchanged their vows beneath the oak tree that had once been their secret mailbox, Rosa silently thanked whatever twist of fate had guided her to the wrong doorstep that autumn morning. Some mistakes, it turned out, were actually beginnings in disguise. The end.